Hello, my little radicals. It is the big radical, Aaron Robinson, coming at you today from my very own podcast. I am very excited about this. I don't know if I should be looking at the camera, if I should be looking at my computer, if I'll be looking everywhere. So bear with me. I'm really excited. But this is episode 1 of my podcast. I still don't even know what it's going to be called quite yet. But so we're just going to go with the flow. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys tuning in. And this is basically a podcast about me, my life, interesting things, topics, people, places, things, and we just want to explore everything from great topics to hard topics to really difficult topics to just everything, down to what I like to say, what foods you need to eat to get a good butt. So welcome, let's start, and let's do this. So I am Aaron Robinson, and we are going to go in 3, 2, 1. Boom. So everyone, Aaron Robinson here. Thank you very much for tuning in. And I guess my very first podcast is me just talking about myself. I have never done anything like this before. So this is a little bit different, but yeah, I'm going to talk about myself. So I was born on May 1st, 1989. I was a beautiful little boy. I think I was like 7 pounds, 11 ounces, something like that. I sprouted up. I became a little bit of a thick boy in elementary. And then, I just had my glow up moment in my 30s. So that's pretty much me. But yeah, I was born on May 1st, 1989. I am 33. I am an active realtor here in the city of Edmonton and greater Edmonton area. I have been for the last 4 years. This is my 5th year. And before that, actually, I worked in management for the city of Edmonton for rec and leisure centers as facility foreman, head lifeguard, programmer, advanced first aid instructor, Naganu instructor, pre-employment instructor. So I worked for the city of Edmonton for quite a long time. And actually, to tell you the truth, I tell a lot of people that the city was that job that I really honestly feel set me up experience-wise to be able to be as radical as I am today in real estate and just all over my life. But yeah, so I started with the city of Edmonton, and then that was a good career, but it was one of those where I kind of thought at the end of the day, is this it? Am I basically, and there might be some pool people that listen to this that might take offense to this, but I looked at myself at the end of the day and I was like, I can go back to school. I can do all this. At the end of the day, I'm going to remain a pool bitch. And that's literally what I was. And the job was very valuable. I learned a lot from the job. The thing I take away the most was the people. It was the people that I worked with and the patrons a lot. But that was honestly, I feel, what kind of gave me that step forward of stepping out of my comfort zone, having to have difficult conversations with people, having to have good conversations, resolving issues, that type of stuff. I really feel that kind of broke me into the realm of sales, of branding, of marketing, and doing my own thing away from another entity. So that was how I got into real estate. But actually, to tell you the truth, I think we need to go back a little bit further. And we need to go all the way back to the day when I came out of my mom's womb. And to be honest with you, my poor mother, I think she was in labor for honestly 48 hours or something like this. But my head was too big and that woman could not push me out to save her life. So after basically, from what she tells me, and my mom is, well, I get my craziness from my mom. So maybe she's exaggerating. Who knows? But I don't think it's an exaggeration. She pushed me up against a big black wall for literally 24 hours. And then the doctors were like, Cheryl, we need to give you a C-section. And then I came popping out, and that was how the wonderful Aaron Radical Robinson entered the world. From there, I had a pretty normal childhood. My dad was a subcontractor. He started his own company, Robinson Metalworks. And then from there, did a little bit of contracting, residential and commercial. But he did a lot more subcontracting. And actually, he started his company up in Siberia, Russia. He actually really kind of started up in northern Canada, in the Northwest Territories, and then moved it out to Siberia. And during that time, my dad was gone here, there, and everywhere. My mom was a stay-at-home wife, a stay-at-home mom. She stayed home to take care of me, and she was also pregnant at that time with my younger brother, Lucas. Lucas and I have about 4.5 years between us. It's basically 5, but if we look at the time span, or the years, it's technically 4. But my brother was born, and I think, and I've never actually really talked to anyone about this, and I don't even think I've talked to my parents about this. But when my brother was born, he was in the hospital in intensive care with colon disease that he had. So I would say about the first 6 years, he was just constantly in ICU all the time. My dad was always in Russia working, and that put a lot of stress and weight and responsibility on my mom's shoulders. Well, having a 4 and a 5-year-old during that time, and then having to be in the hospital, I think for my mom, she needed a lot more support. So she leaned on a lot of people, a lot of family members. She leaned on our church based friends, schools, and vacation Bible schools, and all that. So I say from the age of like 4 to about 10 and 11, Aaron got shipped off everywhere and anywhere. And it wasn't in a bad way, but it was my mom had to go to the hospital and spend a 15-hour day with my brother. Where was Aaron going to go? Aaron was going to go to his Auntie Kathy's house, who taught me piano lessons, and I was going to hang out there with a lot of my church friends, or I'd go to a vacation Bible school. But the moral of this story is from a very young age, I seemed to always get put into these situations where Aaron just couldn't be invisible. Aaron couldn't just be that person with his back up against the wall wanting to just be alone. Aaron had to constantly push himself out of his comfort zone. And I remember when I was young, half the time I'd be like, I really don't want to go to this other vacation Bible school. I don't want to go talk to new people. I don't want to do this for the 3rd time this summer. But I had to. And it was a push that I always seemed to have to do. But now that I'm older, it's one of those where I'm like, just step out of your comfort zone. It's hard, but if you step out of your comfort zone, it gets easier every single time. And I feel like when I was younger, that was a big lesson that maybe wasn't taught to me, but I experienced a lot of it. Was, Aaron, you need to step out of your comfort zone. This is just what reality is. So I basically grew up in, I wouldn't say other people's households, but I grew up very socially around a lot of friends, schools, churches, and that kind of stuff. And then, my brother got healthy. My dad stopped working in Russia. He brought his company back. And then at about 11 or 12, everything just went to like a normal childhood. But I would say from a young age, I was kind of expected just to buck up, make friends, be social, be that one that's the loudest in the room. Even though my dad was always like, Aaron, do you need to be the loudest one in the room? I was like, yes, of course, Dad, I need to be the loudest one in the room. Because if I'm not the loudest one in the room, who's going to notice me? And I think that is actually something in my adult life nowadays that I realize is that I don't have to be the loudest person in the room because people just automatically know me now. But it's a whole vibe, I feel, and it's an aura. Rather than always having to be that loudest person in the room, how can you attract people to you without being loud? And that's through like personality. That's through a vibe. That's through almost an aura. So it's taken a while to kind of learn that about myself. But at the same time, I feel like it's been a good learning curve. So when I left the city of Edmonton and I started real estate, that was a big mental health year for me, I found. And mental health is one of those where I think everyone has mental health problems. Not everyone, but I think everyone suffers from some type of mental health issue. Just others are better at dealing and addressing with them than others are. And let's just say that I feel like Aaron, as well as, and if there's any haters out there, feel free to comment on any platform and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel that a lot of queer people growing up have a better ability or an act to hide themselves and to put on a persona. And also, as well, because you're in the closet, you have to put on this persona if you don't want people to know who you are. But at the same time, what comes with that is a lot of different ways you learn how to cope with things, whether that's bullying or whatnot. And for me, I wouldn't say I was bullied a whole lot when I was younger, but like there were comments people would say. I had a very toxic girlfriend actually throughout high school, which if I was to look back on it, I should have just left. But Aaron stayed in that for 6 years, and that was the most degrading thing of my life. But it taught me how to compartmentalize and bury stuff, which when you're 16, 17, 18, that's kind of how it goes. That's what you do. What I noticed is that shit that you bury for a long period of time, it stays buried, but it surfaces at some point. And when I was leaving the city of Edmonton, I was with the city of Edmonton for 16 years, and that was a long time to have just one job. All my friends bounced around from this job to that job, and I was that one that was like, nope, I have the seniority, I'm staying, this is what I'm going to do. And when I had to leave, that was a big moment for me because that was my security blanket. That was basically the job that fed the family. It allowed Scott to build his companies because it gave us that constant paycheck every 2 weeks that paid off everything and allowed him to build. And it allowed us to live. And leaving that, regardless if realtors make more money or whatever the circumstance was, that was a big mind fuck almost for me, was leaving that for something potentially more, but it could not have been more. So that was a big time in my life where I was really like, Aaron, what is going on? But at that same time, that's when I started to really notice I had some mental health stuff go on, but I was not willing to deal with any of it. And I just thought to myself, no, Aaron, you're a man, you're a guy, you're going to do what your dad taught you to do. You're going to keep your mouth shut and you're just going to work harder and you're going to keep on going. And I worked very hard. I built a very good business during that time, but I did not focus on my mental health. I focused on everything but my mental health. And then COVID hit. And, I felt like the 2 COVID years, a lot of people struggled. It was hard. I almost felt like there were parts of my life that I struggled in, but work-wise, I thrived. I was busier than ever, but at the same time, I had nothing better to do but prospect. I had nothing better to do with my time because we couldn't leave the house. You couldn't really go out social gatherings. I couldn't even go see my parents at this time. So there was nothing to do but work and grind and build and build and build. And after 2020 and 2021 of COVID, 2022 started. And, 2022 was just the start of a year for me where it wasn't a bad start of a year, but it was a year where now that everything was opening up and we were going back to regular life, I had to really take a conscious look at myself and say, do I want to go back to normal or do I want a new normal? And in answering that, I realized that my old normal was not healthy. My old normal was destructive almost. It was in a part where I just ignored everything that happened or went on with me, whether it was big or small or whatever. And I just put my head in the sand and I worked and I ignored everything that I needed to work on. And 2022 just hit and it was like I had no more to give. And not in a negative way, but I started going to therapy and a lot of work stuff was bleeding into my relationship with Scott. Relationship stuff was bleeding into work. And I felt that I had an imbalance. Scott and I were really arguing, and that was kind of where me and him were just, honestly, we weren't on the same page with anything. And where we're usually always on the same page with everything, I was just in this place where I just didn't know what was up, what was down. I didn't know what I wanted. I just didn't know. And I really had to be pushed to go get help. So I went and saw a therapist, and that was a journey and a half, was because I had talked to people in the past before, but for me and where I was in my life was I have always ever just talked to straight people because that's a lot of my family, my friends. In Edmonton, I'm not very active in the gay community as to like the bar life, the partying scene, that type of event stuff, because I'm not really a drinker. I'm the one that goes to bed at 10:30 at night. So that is not really a big part of my life. But at the same time, trying to find people that were in my shoes, my way of life, or just in the same place of life, I was finding really hard to find people like that. And I was talking to all my straight friends, and that was where I said to myself, and I said to Scott one day, I said, I don't feel like anyone gets me. And he was like, well, what do you mean? And I was just like, I just don't feel like people get me. I think they hear me and I think they recognize me, but I don't think when I talk to somebody and I look in their eyes, I don't feel like they get me. They haven't walked a day in my shoes. And just not even normal life stuff, but just like from a gay man talking to another gay man is a lot different than a straight man talking to a gay man. There's really, when a straight man talks to a gay man, you can't really relate to anything. You can't really relate to anything in a relationship, or I guess you can, but it's a very different dynamic. So when I was looking for a therapist, I said to myself, I don't want to talk to another straight person. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a way I wanted somebody to look at my life, my situations, my relationship from the same lens that I'm looking at it from, not from an even more conservative lens or an even more liberal lens or just a straight lens. I wanted it to be very specific to what I was going through. So I had a friend, and she is a psychiatrist, and I said to her, I said, do you have any or know of anyone in the LGBTQ plus community that is a therapist or specializes in these type of things? And she gave me a few names, and I landed on my therapist, Rod, and he works out of Sherwood Park, and he is absolutely amazing. But that was a turning point for me, was just having somebody to talk to that lived it at some point in their life too, and that knew where I was coming from because of the lens that we had. It was eye-opening, and it almost made me shift my thought process and everything to be like, I'm not crazy. Like, okay, this is normal in this type of situation. This is normal in this type of relationship. This is normal for me. This is normal. So anyways, I started seeing a therapist, and he's been absolutely wonderful. I started seeing him once a week, which was very expensive for like 2 months. Oh my God. I should have been a therapist. Either that or a dentist, an orthodontist. I would have loved to work on people's teeth. I don't know what that is, but like, yeah, I'd totally be that one that gets so much pleasure. I wouldn't want to clean your teeth though. Just let me slap some braces on there, slap you with a very expensive bill, go home by 4 o'clock. I think I could make a great orthodontist. But yeah, I should have been a therapist because I'm great at listening. I'm just not great at listening to myself. But having that switch and having an outlet to talk to was great. So I saw him for about the first 2 months, once a week. And then from there, we went to once every 2 weeks. Now, over the summer, I've actually have really been missing Rod. And actually, I sent him a text message the other day. I was like, Rod, I know you're on holidays and I'm on holidays, but we really need a session. It's because I just feel like I just need to be reminded of certain tools to use, and to have that little buffer of like, even when Scott pisses me off and I can't be like, Scott, you pissed me off, or tell our combined best friend he pissed me off, and be like, Rod, he pissed me off so much, and this is the state of mind I was in, and this is what I wanted to say. And Rod just basically sits there and he's like, Aaron, I get where you're coming from. Now tell me where that emotion came from. And I'm like, oh my God, sending me back to like age 6. Oh my God. So it has been a game changer for me, as well as my relationships. It has really shown me how to navigate relationships in a healthier way as well, rather than being that giver that I am and constantly giving all of myself and not keeping any for me. That has been a big lesson as well. Is, okay, well, this is what people expect. And, I've given people that expectation of, this is Radical Robinson. This is how loud I am. This is how much fun. But what parts of that do I save for me so that I'm healthy at the end of the day and I'm not giving everything away? So that's been a lot of what my journey on 2022 has been. And, I'm looking at real estate, and I am looking at building a community of like-minded realtors and building my business and all that stuff. So a lot of that is where this mental health aspect has come from. Is I've been put in a lot of situations that have been good and bad. And hindsight's always 2020. And when I looked at wanting to, and I don't even want to use the word team, because the word team, I feel in my head, means that there's someone always up at the top that looks down on everybody else in this pyramid scheme of a world, and they just want their pockets filled. And for me, I don't want a team. I don't want my pockets filled. I want to build up other individuals. And so that's where this mental health piece is, I've done a lot of work on myself. And what I've learned is people like me. And that's sometimes hard for me to realize, is that I'm so likable. I don't think about it sometimes. And I'm like, oh my God, you really like me? Like, I think I'm a gong show half the time. Like, the shit that comes out of my mouth, how do you like this? But people do. And that's what I want to build with others, is I want to build that authenticity, that I want to show their genuine side. I want to sell them what they do in the industry, the products that they sell, just automatically get sold with that individual. So I think this is where the journey I am on, is creating a culture for people where it's supportive, where it is encouraging, but at the same time we challenge each other, but we're all on the same level. We all have the same level of respect for each other. And that's kind of what's going on in my world. This has been very weird talking to myself about me. I do have to say, I feel like I just blabbled for 15 minutes, which in my head feels like 45, but it's probably only 15. But that is my very first podcast, you guys, about who is Aaron Radical Robinson. I feel like I jumped from third base to first base to second base, back to home run, and then went back to second. But if any of you picked up what I was throwing down, throw me a follow. And let's get this radical show on the road. But anyways, you guys, this is my very first podcast. I am Aaron Radical Robinson. And I'm very excited for this new journey that we are going on together. So until next time, my next guest that I am having on is my wonderful and beautiful husband, Scott Townsend. So we are going to talk a little bit of our relationship. We're going to talk a little bit about our businesses. I'm going to probably brag about him and blah, 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 blah. All the wonderful things that a beautiful, loving spouse does. But anyways, catch ya next time, y'all. Cheers.